Hey there, I'm Mark Drager, and this is How to Sell More. In the high-stakes world of government contracts and complex RFPs, now, I'm talking about anywhere from 100 million to multi-billion-dollar projects in defense, in aerospace, healthcare, infrastructure. Well, frankly, the average company, they would struggle to complete a bid, let alone to win it. But what if the way to win these lucrative contracts isn't about flashy presentations or even having some kind of inside edge?
Governments don't believe in relationships, and that's foreign to business managers and especially marketing people. So the only thing that lets you win a contract is your proposal. Full stop. It doesn't matter what relationship you had earlier. It doesn't matter what contracts you had earlier. It doesn't matter if they love you, hate you. The only thing that matters is the proposal.
That's Alex McPhail, one of Canada's leading bid managers with over 35 years of experience helping companies win complex procurement contracts. And in his book, Win Big the Exa Way, he breaks down a proven leadership framework that has won over $16 billion in contracts.
Proposals are unlike anything else you do in business. If you have 1,000 mandatory requirements where you have to get all 1,000 right, if you get 999 right, you're out. That simple.
Today on How to Sell More, we talk RFPs and procurement. Now, listen, I know as a listener, you're probably not bidding on billion-dollar contracts, but the core fundamentals of Alex's book and the conversation that follows is going to help you develop a strategic approach to really any competitive sales process. It's going to help you think about your win rate, and you're going to learn exactly what evaluators are looking for, whether you're responding to a formal RFP or simply trying to stand out in a really crowded marketplace. So Alex, your book, and I guess by extension your work, has been quoted to say that it's a must-read for anyone eager to improve their win rates for large competitive contracts. So we're talking about RFPs, and that sometimes is a bit of a dry subject, but having read your book and having worked through just the complexity of the type of work that you do at your firm, it's almost mind-boggling to me that someone could spend 5 or 10 or 14 years getting $100 million plus contracts. Like I almost can't imagine the scope or size of it. So tell me about the type of work that you do at Exa.
One of the things that we help clients do is talk to the customer long before, like years even before the RFP comes out. And we want the client to be talking to the technical managers who are ultimately responsible for writing the evaluation criteria that will determine who wins, and say to them, hey, have you thought about this? Like, this is a good idea. You guys should do that. Now, these guys are smart. They know they're being sold, but they also are smart when they see something that they could use, and they'll say, oh, yeah, I didn't know about that. Okay, so let's build that into the evaluation criteria. And by doing that, that makes the win more likely at the end. So that's the first half of what we do. The second half is when the RFP itself comes out, and I'm really minimalizing the response to it. It's quite complicated. When the RFP comes out, we marshal a team that responds to the technical requirements, the financial requirements, and in defense programs, what's called the offset requirements. And we help them present the best possible solution and document to win. I mean, that's in a nutshell. And if it were that easy, then I'd be out of business.
And when you say that you're minimizing it, I will say, listeners, that Win Big, the Exa Way, is like just shy of 500 pages.
Yeah.
It's textbook size. And you had mentioned to me in passing a few weeks ago that it's the type of book that sits on people's desks. And it's dog-eared, and it's written in almost because there doesn't appear to be, to my knowledge, any other kind of guide like this in the marketplace. Something that is going to help those of us who maybe want to become stronger at RFP responses, working with federal, provincial, or local government contracts, winning more competitive situations, being able to sell through procurement better. There doesn't seem to be a lot of resources out there. I know certainly in my 20 years of business, I have been very bad at winning contracts through anything aside from a relationship.
And actually, that's really interesting because the first chapter I talk about relationship management, and it's very foreign to businesses about how the government does business, and I'm going to take a bit of a detour here. Governments don't believe in relationships, and that's foreign to business managers and especially marketing people. So the only thing that lets you win a contract is your proposal. Full stop. It doesn't matter what relationship you had earlier. It doesn't matter what contracts you had earlier. It doesn't matter if they love you, hate you. The only thing that matters is the proposal. And I'm really good at relationship management too. I'd say 80% of our business is repeat business through relationship management. But I have to put all of that aside when I go in and support a company, because I say it's not about relationships, it's about answering the question. Coming back to the earlier part of your question, yeah, the programs are very large. We tend to support programs of $100 million plus, often well into the billions of dollars. We've come across companies where they've done this for the very first time. They have no idea how to do this. And so from when we deal with those customers, there's a lot of hand holding going on. There's a lot of just education. We have other customers that know what they're doing. They have all the capabilities, but they just run out of resources. They need horsepower. And we'll go in and they say, look, we've got everything. We know what we need to do. We know the process. We just want you to help us out in a few areas. And so we do that as well. And most of our business is somewhere in the middle where they ask for our help, both in horsepower and in process. So we have some customers who, what I call our strategic customers. And we have about, between 5 and 10 of those. And they're usually in the defense area, and they sign a relationship agreement with us. And they say they come to us whenever they need help. And it'll be long before the RFP comes out. We'll help them set things up. And it's an exclusive relationship between us and them. And when they tell us, sometimes years ahead of an opportunity coming up, then we lock them into that. And when someone else comes to us, because they will, when a competitor comes to us, like, can you help us out with this? We'll say, I'm sorry, we can't. We're already locked in. So we get a lot of that strategic alignment for many of our customers. And then we have what let's call them walk-in customers, who have never worked with us before. Most of them have been referred to us by customers, and it's a one-shot deal, and we may never do business with them again.
And so you write that the stress involved in developing proposals like the types that we're speaking about is unlike any other project, which is why people hate writing proposals. So when we get into the idea of how we will strategically pursue this, how we're going to scope it, how we're going to write it, what are the common mistakes, the common pitfalls people fall into? Because first of all, people don't love this. So if you don't love this process, and if it's highly complex and it covers many, many months or years, and there's all these different components, I just sounds like a landmine of things that can go wrong.
It's a field. Yeah, it's a landmine. So let's talk about the stress first. Proposals are unlike anything else you do in business. There are projects and contracts that can be quite difficult. But if you have a project and you're not performing as well as you'd like, and then you can phone up the customer and say, look, we got a milestone coming up. We really value your business, but we think we're going to miss the milestone. Can we renegotiate that milestone? We might take a hit. The customer might say, okay, you know what? That's going to cost me something. So I'll move the milestone back by a month, but it's going to cost you $10,000. And okay, all right, let's give and take, right? So that's how most projects are run. With a proposal, you submit on time. You can have 1,000, and I'm not exaggerating, you can have 1,000 mandatory requirements. A mandatory requirement means you have to get it right. You have 1,000 mandatory requirements where you have to get all 1,000 right. If you get 999 right, you're out. That's simple. So the pressure is enormous. There's no negotiation. There's no opportunity for saying, hey, we're running a little late, or we're having this problem, or that. No, you deliver on time and you deliver perfectly, or you're out. That is extraordinarily stressful. The second thing to think about is at the executive level. I think I mentioned in my book near the opening that I was in a meeting and there's a president there, and he's commanding this meeting with his vice presidents and directors. And I asked him, because I always ask this, I say, how important is win to you? And he just looked around and he said, take a look. Half these people are gone if we lose. And I think they kind of knew it, but this is the first time they actually heard it. And half their faces went ashen white, right? Because they knew who the half was going to be. At the executive level, that's a horrible burden to carry. At the manager level, things are extraordinarily complex. There are so many things that you have to worry about. You have to worry about the requirements management. You have to worry about the financial management. You have to worry about proposal writing. You have to worry about editing and, on and on. So there are a lot of balls up in the air that you cannot drop any one of them, because remember, you get one thing wrong, you're out. And at the writer level, the writers know all of this. And most writers are voluntold, right? They're working on some project somewhere and they say, they get the touch. You go and work on this proposal. And so now they're doing something that they don't like doing, something they're not trained to do. And they know if they make a mistake, they're going to cost people's jobs. Like, that's a huge burden to carry as an engineer who's supposed to be doing quality assessment. And now suddenly you're writing a proposal. So it is very stressful for the people who work in it.
So it sounds like there's an enormous amount of pressure to get everything right. But I'm curious, is there like a strategic side to this? Like, beyond just meeting the requirements, are there ways to gain a competitive advantage? Because I've heard stories from business owners and friends and companies who really like bid low initially, knowing that the scope is going to change later. And so it seems like there's a game. Is there a game to winning these contracts? Can you share examples of how you've helped companies kind of like optimize their bids?
So in one program, it was a small program for us. It was $65 million. We helped this company figure out how to put forward the best price. And one of the things we did is the RFP called for what's called a SIL, a Systems Integration Laboratory. That's a technical term for basically a place where you test things. You make sure things are working. So it was mandatory that you included a SIL in your solution. And then somewhere else in the RFP, they had the desired requirements of SIL. We said, wait a minute, those are desired requirements. Those aren't mandatory. But I think they've made a mistake. I think that they wanted the desired requirements to be in the mandatory requirement part. So we sent a question in and we said, and the question was carefully worded. And we said, you've asked it for mandatory SIL and these are desirable requirements. Is that what you meant? So we just asked and they said, yeah, that's what we meant. So we proposed a mandatory SIL with, I think, like a table, a power bar, and a chair. And all of the technical requirements we left out because the cost of fulfilling those requirements was going to be $10 million. And we were able to take $10 million off of the $65 million program by not answering it. So my customer won. And the client was furious, right? But we warned them. And even the contracting agency, the procurement agency came back to the client and said, no. They asked the question. They did everything right. So because PSBC, it was called PWGSC, got involved in that. And they said, no, they did everything right. So you have to live with this. Now, in the end, they did a scope change to the contract and added in the things that they did. So that was one example of gaming.
Okay, but in this situation, because I feel like we're breaking so many rules here. And you can do this because the goal is to win the contract.
Yeah.
Relationships, so playing this game, making your client furious. I mean, that, again, I feel like this is not how we should operate, like knowing we're cutting 10 million out, knowing they're going to add 10 million back later.
They're going to add it back in later.
So we won the contract. Relationships, they're the ones who set the rules. Yeah. They're the ones who have to live by it. But this just doesn't feel, I mean, it's a win because we get the contract and they get it supplied, but it doesn't feel like right to me. So help me understand.
You're saying it's slimy.
No, it's not. It's not that it's slimy. It's just if we are obviously undercutting everyone else because we noticed this little loophole and we're taking advantage of it, it feels like it's against the intentions of what everyone wanted to operate as a team to try and deliver the best project possible.
That's why we put the question in during the RFP process. All right. So we gave them an opportunity to recognize their mistake and correct it. If my ethos would not allow us to put that in without the question first. So we point out to them and they either missed it or it's what someone wanted, but in the end, they realized it's not what they wanted. So the difference between being unfair, which I don't think we were, and being shrewd, those are different things. And my job is to help my customer achieve the advantage for everyone else one of my jobs is by recognizing little things like that. I mean, I'll give you another example of how we did it. It was a smaller program and we had to put in a bid, and it was really weird evaluation criteria. The financial criteria said the bidder that is closest to the mean average of all the prices gets the highest points for financial score. I thought, wow, that's really weird. Never seen that before. Okay. So then we put in a question. Again, we put the question in saying, could we submit more than one bid? And they thought the reason we put that question in was because we had multiple teams and we wanted to bid multiple teams and hope that.
But it said you wanted to affect the average or the mean?
That's what we did. We just put in multiple bids and had them a dollar apart. And so we skewed the mean average around our bid. And the client was furious.
Of course, but when you have a great accountant, when you have a great lawyer on your side, when you have someone like you who goes, spot a little opportunity here, let's go ahead and widen this and leverage it.
We put the question in, and I always insist on doing that. I don't like when you think that they've actually made a mistake. I don't like capitalizing on that. I go and say, hey, is this what you want? Is this what you meant to say? And if they come back and say, yep, then okay, we're good.
So you mentioned a few of the skills that are required. If I'm looking to strengthen my in-house team, or I'm looking to pursue more of these types of contracts, what types of team members, what types of skill sets do I need in-house? What can I outsource? What are the common structures?
So I'd start at the top. A lot of executives don't understand what's involved in major complex bids. No, to them, it's just a project, right? Well, I've already talked about the unique elements of a proposal. Proposals are a drain on the rest of the company, because if you're committed to winning this proposal, you need people to write. And the only people who can write are the subject matter experts who have the knowledge to respond to the requirements. That means you're pulling people off of profitable programs and you're putting them into a proposal where you may or may not win. So the whole company takes a hit because you're pulling those people from all over. So you need to understand the unique elements of managing a company that engages in proposals. If you're not familiar with this process, I would hire, I would hire a capture manager or someone who really understands capture management. I'd do that first.
What is that? What does that term mean?
So I'll get to that. I'd hire the capture manager before a proposal manager. The capture manager starts from the very beginning. The very first time you sniff out an opportunity, maybe you're talking to a supplier, maybe you're at a conference and someone says, hey, have you heard that this tank system is coming up in a few years? No, I didn't know. Oh, wow. Okay. We'd really like to get involved in that. So that's what we call first contact. First contact is when you first hear about something. So now the capture manager starts sniffing around and realizes, oh, there is a program coming up, goes in and talks to the defense managers who are responsible. Oh, yeah, they're really serious. So this is happening. Okay. So now the capture manager looks inside the own company and they realize we don't have a logistics support inside of our company to be able to respond to what I think the RFP is going to be. So I need to go out and find a company that specializes in logistics support, sign an agreement with them before anyone else does, right? So that capture manager is essential in creating the team that will help you win. So that person is extremely knowledgeable about the field that they work in, and they are a champion of the company.
And so this role sounds like it's part strategy and business development. It's part understanding just the entire scope and what is required to deliver, almost like a general, I suppose, looking at a map, of a war that's going on. You have to be able to have the right people in the right places at the right times. And people don't go to school for this, do they?
No. So that's the other really interesting thing there. I don't know of any educational programs that teach you how to do capture management or even proposal management. You can go and take proposal management courses, but I don't think you can go to Carleton or U of T and get a proposal management certificate or something like that. It doesn't exist. So a lot of this is self-learned. There are companies that specialize in this kind of education, and you can get certificates through private enterprise organizations. So that's a way to do it. So after you've got your capture manager, because the capture manager is going to build the team, right? So if there are proposal managers, if there are other people, other leaders, the capture manager is going to drive us. And notice the second qualification of the capture manager that I said, that they are a champion of the company, right? So in other words, it's someone you can trust to go out and talk to another supplier, a competitor, but always your company's position first is someone that you trust in implicitly. So someone, when they come back to you and they say, hey, we need to realign our production facility in order to do this. And you say, what? Well, if you want to capture this program coming up, we're not going to meet the requirements unless we change now. Like, it's going to be too late by the time the RFP comes out. It'll take us a year to do it. So we need to change now. And so you need to look that guy or girl in the eyes and say, wow, okay, did not see that coming, but I trust your judgment. We're going to take it under advisement. So that's why the capture manager is so important.
And so it sounds like there is a tremendous investment. There's an opportunity cost for sure, but there's an investment that has to be made. Do you believe that the lack of investment, so the lack of resources, the lack of staffing the right positions, the lack of giving people enough time, the trying to just kind of like bang it out, so to speak, do you believe that's actually what hurts more organizations than maybe other parts of it?
Yeah. So we have a capture and proposal maturity index that I talk about in the book. And we rank companies at 4 levels. 1 is the lowest, 4 is the highest. So 1 is the kind of company that sees an RFP and says, oh, we should respond to this. I wonder how, so they muddle their way through it.
Yeah, so that's me. I'll put my hand up there.
Okay.
Hey, there's something here. What should we do? And can we get it done for next week?
4 is a company that has all of the management and physical infrastructure in place already before an RFP comes out. And not only that, knows that the RFP is coming, has pre-positioned themselves to respond to the RFP in such a way that they have a good chance of winning it. So that's level 4. And then there's somewhere in between. Most companies strata. So, and I'm talking about big companies, companies that you've heard of. Large companies have surprising straddles across a 3 or a 4 or 2 or 3. So I've worked with one company that's a multinational organization. They have a robust management system. Quality management system is what I'm looking for. And so they talk about the capture process. They talk about finance. They talk about this. And their quality management system is probably 100,000 pages. It's embodied in some computer network somewhere. And then when it comes to proposal writing, it has 1 line: write the proposal. That's it. So not every company has the maturity and depth that you think they would. So I've actually helped that company develop their quality management system to improve it. So companies are often their own worst enemies. My take is, if you don't have a 1 in 3 chance of winning, all other things being equal, if you don't have 1 in 3 chance of winning, you probably shouldn't go after it. So in other words, every third you win. I mean, consider that somewhere between 2 to 5% of your contract cost goes to proposal development. That's every cost, the internal costs, external costs, lost opportunity costs, like everything. So 2 to 5% goes into proposal development. If you win 1 out of 3, so that's anywhere from 6 to 15% of the 1 program that you won that went to pay for the 3 that you went after. So what we push more than anything else is what's called win rate. And it sounds self-serving from my perspective because I'm a consultant that's out for hire. But I tell people the cost of the proposal development is inconsequential next to win rate. If you can win 1 out of 3, whereas you were winning 1 out of 4, if you can increase that win rate, your total costs go way down. Even if you double your costs themselves, but because now you're paying, instead of paying for 3 opportunities for 1 win, or instead of paying for 4 opportunities for 1 win, you're paying for 3 opportunities for 1 win. You're winning more often, right? You're winning more. So your revenue is higher, your costs go down. So that's what we talk about more than anything else, is win rate. And so when we look at the maturity of companies, we ask them, do you even measure your win rate? Because a lot. Do you understand why you win and why you don't, because a lot don't. And if you do all of that, then do you manage your win rate at the executive level? Is it a KPI? And is it something that your executives have on their dashboard? And is it something they're managing at the executive level to say, how do we increase it?
And so if I wanted to improve win rate, if we wanted to focus on this, my immediate thought is I need to increase my volume to get more at bats, to increase the cycle, to increase R&D, to essentially just increase the volume so that way we can get better and better as we go. The other side of that might be just do less better, right? And just spend more time, more energy, more focus, more resources on fewer things so that way you can essentially really knock it out of the park each and every time. Which, if you had to go left or right, which direction do you tend to go?
Hands down, no question, do less better. No, there's no competition between the two. If you try to do more, then really what you're doing is throwing more jello at the wall and hoping that some of it sticks, right? You're burning out your people because they only have limited resources. You're going after opportunities that you shouldn't, right? So remember the 1 and 3. If you're below 1 and 3, you should be saying no. So one of the problems is just human dynamics. Some companies have pretty robust go, no go processes, and I talk about that in the book. So your capture leader comes to you with this program to say, hey, we want to go after this program. It's $100 million. I think we should really go after it. And so after you start asking more and more penetrating questions, it looks darker and darker that you begin to say, look, like our win rate is like 1 out of 10 here. Like, what are we doing? Why are we? Because I really like it. Well, I don't care that you like it. The numbers aren't adding. So stop and bring us an opportunity that we can win. When you do that, you aren't burning your people out at the proposed side of the team. You're going after high quality programs that you have a pretty good chance of winning. And then because you're not burning people out, you can invest in them more. You can invest in the IT. You can invest in the infrastructure as long as you maintain your wins. And so that's why you have a very mature and careful process where you decide what it's called a go, no go process. Do we go after this program or do not? And that must be very, very mature, very comprehensive, very deep, and quite frankly, very brutal. You just have to say no. That's the biggest thing that executives have a problem saying is no, because what they're saying no to in their mind is this is no to revenue. Oh my God, there's revenue out there. And I'm saying no, but you have to rephrase the question. And is this revenue we actually have a chance of securing? So I worked with a company once and they were a small company and they had 22 business lines, like a small company, 22 business lines. And they said, we're really struggling here. I said, yeah. And so I got them to whittle it down to 4 business lines and they doubled their revenue in a year.
Yeah. I mean, listen, removing complexity from a business is always a great strategic play. And I mean, that's a perfect example right there. It clearly paid off. Now, I'm curious. You have 35 years of experience across all these industries, different project types, different sizes. What part of the process do you love? So you're going to say winning, of course. We all love winning. We all love winning, don't we?
Yeah, beyond winning. So I have a client just yesterday. I ran what I call a clinic and I walked it's usually the authors. And I walk them through, this is why we're doing things. Like, this is why evaluation points are so important. This is why we're asking you to do this. This is why we're rather than just going out and telling them, do this, do that, we're explaining to them why. And then this is how you do this. And this is why we're asking you to do it this way, because this is how we get the points and we need the points to win. And so it's a 3-hour process. And at the end of it, they sit back and they just say, wow, like I have never understood this before. Like I now understand why I'm here. I understand my raison d'etre. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it. To me, when I see that light switch on, like that's really cool. Like that's very cool. So when I can help people do their job to a point where they actually enjoy doing it, because they've been voluntold, right? To me, that's really gratifying.
So for me, like the most eye-opening experience I've had is the shift from pitching and bidding on projects to actually being on the other side of the table. So let me explain. In our role As a strategic branding and a marketing agency, our clients often have these complex projects, and some of the requirements fall outside of our in-house capabilities. So we consult with them to help them scope out the full project. So we do, the strategy and the project needs. We write briefs. We help qualify potential vendors. And it makes sense on our side because we have all this industry experience. We have much deeper knowledge than our clients have. And frankly, we can save them a lot of time. We can save them a lot of money. We can help avoid future scope creep by sniffing out the BS, to help quantify and qualify potential vendors. So being on the client side has been really revealing because we get to see exactly what bidders are doing right and frankly, what they're doing wrong. So my question to you is, if you're always on the vendor side, how do you get yourself to the other side of the table? How do you build that experience? Is that actually something that you recommend?
So it's very difficult. Because the procurement side, what you're talking about, is a closed community for good reason. Right now, EXA never, ever participates on the procurement side. We only participate on the vendor side. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One is pragmatic. We get paid better on the industry side. But in addition to that, see, if we work on the government side, then we are precluded from working on the industry side, conflict of interest.
Okay.
So we spend most of our time working on the industry side. But I have worked on the vendor side and I understand how it works. I've run procurements. I've gone through exactly what you're talking about right now. And so I can infuse that knowledge into the team that I'm working with and explain to them the psychology. Like I spent 15 minutes talking about what it's like to sit in a procurement room for 6 weeks, going through 5 proposals from different vendors and how difficult that is. So I want them to understand who they're dealing with. So one of the things that I talk about, I went and I did this yesterday during the clinic. I opened up the floor and I said, who's your customer? And in this particular case, it's defense program. So they said, well, it's D&D, it's the Army. And it could be ISET, who's responsible for the offsets. It could be PSPC, I know I'm using acronyms here, and these go beyond your listeners. But anyway, they come out with all of these clients. And I said, so all of those are right after you win the contract, but you haven't won the contract. Who's your client now? And they all think about it. And I said, your only client is the evaluation team who's looking at your proposal. That is the only group of people that is going to decide whether you win a $500 million contract or not. That's it, period. End of story. Don't think about D&D. Don't think about the Army. Don't think about those. Just think about the evaluator team. So I help my team understand what you're talking about by resetting their frame of reference, because they think that they're writing to the defense community. They're not. They're writing to the evaluation team. And so then I walk them through the whole process about how do you write to an evaluator as opposed to how do you write to a defense manager.
And so I don't know if this is too light of a question or a little bit off the mark, but when I was reading your book, I kept visualizing that scene in the first Iron Man. One of the opening scenes, I don't know if you saw Iron Man years ago, but Tony Stark.
I love that scene. Yeah.
He's standing there and his tie's loose and he looks like hell and he's a little drunk and he's in front of all these, majors and government officials. And he gives this patriotic speech and then they just blow a bunch of shit up. And everyone's like, bravo, let's go ahead and hand him the military contract. This kind of stuff doesn't happen, does it? Or really at the end of the day, it's like, let's blow some shit up.
Not in Canada anyway. I mean, so no, Canada is actually really, really boring when it comes to procurement. We have among the most complicated, most expensive, most pedantic, most convoluted procurement process in the world. And I'm not exaggerating when I say any one of those words. Procurement in Canada, it's to the point where we have international customers. Customers usually want to do work in Canada. And the first thing I say to that is, on behalf of Canada, I apologize, because you are going to do so much more work than you think is necessary. So you have to write project management plans and engineering management plans and quality management plans that are really part of the contract once you win, right? You're not paid to write them at the proposal stage, but you have to write them as part of the proposal. And, my international customers are saying, surely you read that wrong. Like They're asking us to give them work for free. Yeah, if you want the job, then that's how it works. And so they kind of hum and haw, and sometimes they say no thanks, and other times they say, oh, okay. So it's a very difficult process, but the probity of the process is also unmatched. And when I say probity, I mean the transparency and fairness of the process. We have had international customers, and I'm not exaggerating. They said, we want to win in Canada. We don't care about the Canadian market. It's too small for us. But we want to win in Canada because it's recognized internationally as having an open, fair procurement process. If we win in Canada, that opens markets to other countries who would hum and haw otherwise. Because if Canada selects something, then it means they've gone through a very rigorous and fair process and come out with an evaluation. There's no demonstrations blowing shit up at the front end. That sometimes there are demonstrations. It doesn't happen often, but I've been in some programs where there are demonstrations. And so you submit your written proposal, and then they want to demonstrate the solution after they've reviewed the written proposal. In that case, the demonstrations are very carefully controlled, like really tight control, because the procurement authority cares about fairness, and they don't want one company to come in and go rah, 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 and the other company say, well, it's good, it does this. And so they don't want to have the effect that you've talked, the Iron Man effect, don't want that. And so sometimes what they say is the procurement authority says, we will run the demonstration. You give us a manual on how to use the system. And if we can't figure it out, that's your fault. You should have, because we're eventually going to have to figure it out anyway when we buy the system. So let us know how to run the demonstration. We'll run the demonstration. Or they'll say, run the demonstration yourselves. Here's the parameters. Here's the rules. Here's the guidelines. Here's what you must do. And we will oversee everything. And if you do something that's not within those guidelines, we're going to disqualify that part of the demonstration. So it's very tight, very controlled.
So I've been speaking with Alex McPhail, who is the author of Win Big, the XO Way. Final question I have for you. If you could give us one tip or one strategy to help us sell more, what would that be?
How about 3? So at the executive level, I would say educate yourself more about what's involved. You should, especially if you're, and I've spoken to companies where we know we're going to get into this business, but we're not there yet. Don't start hiring the middle managers and so on. First, educate yourself. Find someone or hire someone to coach you or whatever about what's involved, because the decisions that you make at the executive level can reach for far and wide into the company. I've seen companies, and thank God I wasn't involved in the procurement of this, but I've seen companies after they lost a major program, the company shut down. I mean, gone. Everyone loses their jobs. So when you're an executive, you need to understand the implications of what you're into. So educate yourself. Probably at the proposal manager or capture leader level. So the middle management level. I'm not sure it's answering your question, but I would say make sure you find a way to achieve life balance. That this job can consume you. It can own you. It can take away everything that you have, your family. It is an amazingly life suck. Make sure that you find a way to find that balance for both, not just for your sake, but for your employer's sake, right? Because if you fall over, you're no good to your employer. And probably at the subject matter expert level or the writer level, you're not as good a writer as you think. And everyone, right? Like everyone is told and says that they're good communicators, right? Oh yeah, I'm a good communicator, right? And everyone puts that on their resume, right? But you're not as good as you think. So go get some training, especially for proposals, specifically for proposals. Proposal writing is like no other writing.
That was Alex McPhail, author of Win Big, the XO Way, and president and CEO of the EXA Consulting Group. Now, before we go, I want to thank you for listening. Obviously, this is a big topic. We couldn't cover everything in this one episode. And if you're looking to improve your RFP win rate, regardless of the complexity or size of the deals that you're bidding on, I would highly recommend picking up Alex's book. Speaking for myself, speaking on behalf of our clients, It goes into so much more detail than I will probably ever need, but I learned a hell of a lot, and it helped sharpen our thinking and our approach. So you can find Win Big the XO Way anywhere that books are sold, and you can learn more about his work at exaconsulting.group. Now, if you found today's episodes valuable, I would love to hear from you. Hit me up on LinkedIn and answer this question, actually. What's the one thing that you took away from this talk that will help you improve your win rate? If this is the first time listening, I hope you'll check out a few more episodes, maybe consider subscribing. Each week, we share fresh sales and marketing ideas and proven strategies from business experts and seasoned entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Mark Drager. Thanks for listening, and I will catch you in the next one.